I'm so
The
glad that we're
truth is
standing
that
together.
Muhammad is a
Marjorie
pedophile that
Taylor
married
Greene
a
says this is
6-year-old,
no longer
and
a
I don't
battle between
care
left and right.
what religion
This is a
you're on.
battle for
If
America
you rape
first.
or
And the
kill,
final
you deserve
point,
to be
Piers, I'll
publicly
finish on this.
executed.
Valentina's brother serves in U.S. forces. That Valentina,
proudly
instead of
so.
focusing on the 1% of American Muslims who aren't the problem in America,
those very same
perhaps she should
Muslims
focus
killed
on the
soldiers
42
like my
million
brother.
Americans living on SNAP who can't afford basic groceries. She should focus on the servicemen who return to America and sit in the freezing cold and magnificent...
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Truth Review. I'm Hayes, and this exchange contains several specific checkable claims that deserve to be laid out clearly before anything else. Valentina Gomez told Piers Morgan she prefers one dog over 100 million Muslims, then admitted she doesn't know how many Muslims exist in the world and doesn't care. She called British Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood a dirty Pakistani Muslim. Mahmood was born in Birmingham, England. Sami Hamdi countered with actual source data from the UK Office for National Statistics and the US Bureau of Justice on sexual violence, demographics, and perpetrator relationships. Hit subscribe because Truth Review checks every number against the actual source. Now let's get into it.
2 weeks ago, the UK government banned Kanye West from entering the country because of his anti-Semitic outbursts. The decision sparked a debate about Britain's weakness on freedom of speech. Many people accuse the government of inconsistency. People like the racist influencer Valentina Gomez are allowed in, they argued, so why not Kanye? It's possible, and in fact likely, the government had no idea who she was until this point was made. And this week they duly announced that Valentina Gomez has indeed been banned from entering the UK. The Colombian-born American patriot was hoping to attend a Tommy Robinson rally in London next month, but we'll now have to watch it on social media. We're always ahead of the curve. I actually banned Valentina Gomez from the show back in December. Let's take a reminder. Here's my pledge to you. If it turns out the people of Texas, a state that I love and have spent a lot of time in, if it turns out they're all as big as it as you are, then you'll win. And if you win, I'll get you back on Uncensored. But here's the deal. If you lose, you're never coming back. Well, less than 24 hours after Gomez appeared on this show, President Trump endorsed her rival, and she duly lost the primary by a staggering 49 points, one of the biggest beatings in American political history. But given that she's been all over the newspapers back home in the UK, I've decided to comply with Valentina Gomez's personal request that we temporarily lift her ban and have her back on Uncensored. And because she will ride on the coattails of the very reasonable Brits don't understand free speech argument, I've also invited a Brit who was kicked out of the United States for his speech. So joining me now is the Colombian-American activist and anti-Islam influencer Valentina Gomez and the journalist and MD of International Interest, Sami Hamdi. Well, welcome to both of you. Valentina Gomez, why do you think it was unfair that you were barred entry to the United Kingdom?
Good morning, Piers. So good to see you again. Where are your manners, Piers? You're supposed to introduce me correctly. Come on, I'll give you a second chance for you to introduce me once again.
As what?
As the most beautiful and truthful conservative you'll ever meet. Piers, great to see you. Since you don't have the decency to do it, I'll do it myself. Good morning to all of my English lads. I'll be looking forward to meeting each one of you on May 16th at the United Kingdom rally with Tommy Robinson.
All right,
Piers,
can you answer the question? Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And yes, Piers, you said last time on your show, if I lost my election, I wouldn't be back. But never say never, Piers. And believe it or not, Piers, you're my favorite Brit, and Piers. So I cannot wait to hop on a boat, swim across the English Channel, meet Shabana.
Are you able to answer the question, or are we just going to go around the houses?
She's going to bring me some fish and chips, and we're going to have an amazing time.
Right. Just once again, you obviously didn't hear me, or maybe you didn't understand it, but just for simplicity, why do you think it was unfair that you were banned entry to the United Kingdom?
Piers, because I speak the truth, the same reason why the Bible is banned in every Muslim nation. And Piers, if you come after my First Amendment, I can assure you I'm going to use my Second Amendment, Piers Morgan, because that's the beauty about the First Amendment. Whether you disagree with it, we have to protect it at all costs. Just like when your wife goes online and asks to be I would say, accommodated by pool boys, since you already know what's going on with that.
Okay, are you making some weird threat involving guns? I can't really keep up with what you're saying.
Absolutely not. I'm saying I speak the truth. I'm saying that I want every rapist and pedophile behind bars and publicly executed. I'm saying I want every terrorist dead. And I'm saying also that every Muslim should start respecting Christian nations and maybe, hopefully, go back to their 56 Muslim nations, Piers Morgan.
Your reaction when the British Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, banned you from coming in for this rally because of the incendiary, bigoted comments that you've been on the record as saying, was that you called her a dirty Pakistani Muslim and said, I'm coming to England on a boat. Obviously, that is grotesquely offensive, racist, bigoted and vile. But also, there's a point I'd like to make to you is that Shabana Mahmood was born in Birmingham in England. She's as English as I am. You, however, were born in Colombia. You weren't born in the United States. So I would argue that Shabana Mahmood has much more validity to be considered English than you do to be an American.
Piers Morgan, she's from Pakistan. You're an actual British. And let's talk about Pakistan.
She was born in Birmingham,
in
in the middle of England.
Her parents are from Pakistan. Let's not.
Yeah, she was born in Birmingham, in England. She was born in England.
And she's from
English
Pakistan.
Citizen.
Her parents are from Pakistan. And Piers Morgan, the Pakistan is not known for being the cleanest place on earth. It's actually a dirty shithole full of terrorists. I've never heard anybody say that they want to go to Pakistan for vacation.
Okay, let me bring in our other guest because you're obviously intent on being as disgusting as possible, which is your modus operandi. That's why nobody voted for you, by the way. But it doesn't really interest me what happens with your political
Thousands of people voted for me, Piers.
Sami Hamdi, well, you lost by one of the biggest thrashings in American political history. So the voters voted with their own votes. Sami Hamdi, let me bring you in here. You were detained in America by ICE officers for 2 weeks while on a speaking tour. They alleged that you supported terrorism and posed a threat to national security. They said, we said it before, we'll say it again, the United States has no obligation to host foreigners who support terrorism and actively undermine the safety of Americans. Now, you were later allowed to go back to the UK after 2 weeks. But what was your reaction to being barred entry and then being, well, allowed in, but being held in detention and then sent back?
Thank you very much, Piers, for having me. I think, to be honest, the climate in America at the time, you could almost sense that something was coming. My particular case slightly differs from Valentina in that, for me, it was a particularly targeted attack. There was a lady called Laura Loomer online who was going after those who were advocating for Palestine. So they went after American Muslims for Palestine in Michigan. The judge ruled in favor of the American Muslims for Palestine, American citizens. They went after them in Nevada. The judge ruled that they have freedom of speech. They went after Mehdi Hassan and his naturalization. They failed there. They went after Mahmoud Khalil and the green card, and they failed. The judge ruled that Mahmoud Khalil is allowed to stay. So they went after student visas, Rumaysa Ozturk and Muhsin Mahdawi in Colombia. They failed there. And then there was sort of, we need to find something because the judges are ruling against us. And a video appeared of me speaking in Kuala Lumpur, in which I was telling an audience that we should speak freely in these democracies because with this freedom, as people are hearing the message, as they're hearing the message of the humanization of the Palestinians, people are changing their minds. Tucker Carlson is changing his mind. Candace Owens is changing her mind. Dave Smith is changing his mind. And that's why we don't need the violence. We can speak freely, democratically, and use those freedoms to change their opinions. We can use our words and show the images and show the videos. Laura Loomer took this video, her and Senator Ted Cruz and an individual called Dinesh D'Souza, and they openly came on Twitter and said, we need to go after this British lecturer who's giving lectures in Stanford, in Berkeley, in CUNY, all these other places. We need to get rid of them. So this was on the Monday. I saw that tweet. So I was sort of expecting it. And the reason I was only there for 2 weeks as opposed to 6 months, like some other people, is because the friends of mine at the State Department, I'm a risk consultant, I've advised the State Department on a few occasions, they came out and said this was a misunderstanding, we'll clear the record, just go back to the UK, apply for a new visa, and you can come back to America. So my situation is slightly different, but my reaction was, there is this Israel First lobby that's deeply concerned with the shift in American public opinion. How can we scare people into not talking about Palestine, to stop them from speaking about it? Because as you can see in the Gallup poll, now more Americans sympathize with the Palestinians than they do with the Israelis. And the point I make here about Valentina is, You mentioned it, Piers, yourself, that the language of hate didn't resonate with voters. And we saw it that the language of hope is what's resonating. Mamdani speaking about how we should all stand together for humanity and think about the basic needs of the ordinary American, and he wins. Abdul
All right, well,
Sayyid...
Sami, let me jump in. Let me jump in.
Go ahead.
Just to stop you in mid-flow. But the reason that was cited for you not being allowed into the United States was comments that you made on October the 18th, 2023, so just after October the 7th had happened, at a London mosque, and this was cited by the Department of Homeland Security in America, where you said, celebrate the victory. We are pitying a people who brought a huge victory since 1948. Don't pity them. They don't want your pity. Celebrate the victory. And you then asked the crowd, when you got the news that it happened, how many of you felt the euphoria? Now, you said that you were taken out of context.
He's a little terrorist, Piers. He celebrates terrorist attacks. What do you expect from somebody like that?
I mean, if you could wait, please, please. Sami, just, you said you were taken out of context. Explain how you were taken out of context.
So, Piers, that particular video, the reason why, I mean, I know what the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security was saying. In the courts, this was not mentioned at all. The charge sheet only said overstayed the visa because of a revocation. But this particular point that you mentioned, the reason the video was never presented is because it's a doctored video of 5 different clips with 20 minutes between each clip. And when something similar happened to Donald Trump, a BBC director ended up being sacked. The point here being is what is allegedly said in the video that they were claiming wasn't actually being said, which is why 2 federal judges, while I was in ICE, ruled that there were signs that my freedom of speech had been violated and that I had a case to present at the federal courts, which is why when the government came to negotiate to say, would you like to go home? And they said, the condition is please don't go towards the federal courts. I said, I'm happy to go home. And they said, you can come back to America anytime. The point I'm making here, Piers, is that's not the reason why the visa was revoked. It's not the reason why I was detained by ICE.
No, I understand.
Of course.
I understand that distinction, but I'm just curious about, we've got the audio that goes with these comments you made. So let's take a listen. And then I just want you to explain why it was out of context.
Netanyahu did not envisage that for the first time since 1948, the Palestinians would actually retake land back from the Israelis. Netanyahu did not envisage that for the first time since 1948, the Palestinians would be able to hold those territories for more than 72 hours.
We are pitying a people who brought a huge victory since 1948. Don't pity them. They don't want your pity. Celebrate the victory. Allah has shown the world that no normalization can erase the Palestinian cause. When everybody thought it was finished, it's roaring. How many of you feel it in your hearts when you got the news that it happened? How many of you felt the euphoria? Allahu Akbar. How many of you felt it? Why did you feel it? Because the despair vanished. You said this ummah is alive.
So, Sami Hamdi, just to be clear, what was the lack of context?
So in the talk, I described how prior to October 7th, the Saudis were about to normalize with the Israelis. Netanyahu held a map at the United Nations of his future for the Middle East, and there was no Palestine on that map. Israel had subsumed and consumed all of the Palestinians. In the talk, I described how Bloomberg were now publishing articles saying that people are realizing you can't normalize over the heads of the Palestinians. You have to engage them in any discussion regarding a peace. That now the Saudis were no longer going to normalize with the Israelis without a Palestinian state, as the Saudi Crown Prince had suggested. And as a result, when you're seeing all of these headlines, celebrate that victory, that the Palestinians will no longer be trampled, that now everybody's going to include them in any future talks, that it's been demonstrated you can't walk over them and do a peace without consulting them or including them in it. And that's why everybody should celebrate that the Palestinians are back, the Palestinians are involved in what's being discussed, because people are realizing just as you couldn't force the African Americans to abide by slavery, now you're realizing that injustice will result in these incidents. The only way to stop it is to engage the Palestinians. And now everybody is talking to them. That's the victory. But on no account, Piers, in that talk, in even the clips...
But when you said, when you got the news that it happened, how many of you felt the euphoria? What did you mean by that?
That the Palestinians
Piers,
at that time...
Let's be very clear about something. Let's clear something up.
Can you be quiet, please?
Context here. The best thing about it is that we just need to bump every terrorist up.
I'm asking Sami Hamdi to provide the context.
Go ahead, Sami.
When you got the news that the Palestinians were not going to take normalization lying down, that the Palestinians were still there, that they weren't being discarded from the table, when you got the news that the Palestinians were taking action, and bear in mind, at that point, there was still no news of civilian deaths, there were no news of the different atrocities that were committed, that the Palestinians still have a foothold in this, and therefore people should celebrate and say that the Palestinians
Hang on. This was October the 23rd. This is 2 weeks after October the 7th. So everybody knew about all the civilian casualties. We knew that 1,200 people had been murdered. We knew that 7,000 more had been wounded. So when you talk about people hearing the news with euphoria, that would have been said on a day where there was full knowledge of exactly who had been killed.
Not exactly, Piers, because at that time, if you remember, guests were coming on, there was a conflicting of news. It wasn't clear how many had been killed. It wasn't clear who killed them. It wasn't clear if it was Hannibal directive. It wasn't clear if the testimonies by Israelis that the Israeli forces had killed them. All of that was unclear. But the reality is that all civilian deaths are condemnable.
No, I'm sorry. I can't. I'm sorry, Sami. I can't accept that. I'm sorry. It was crystal clear. I was covering it every day at the time.
Finally.
Sorry, no.
Piers.
Can you please wait? Can you please wait? No, Sami, just to be clear, I mean, I was on air every day pretty much after October the 7th. We are talking 16 days later, you said this. We knew how many people had been killed and we knew how they'd been killed. So I'm just curious why you would use the phrase euphoria. How many of you felt the euphoria when by then we knew that there had been a massacre of predominantly civilian people in Israel?
Piers, at the time in which October 7th was taking place, there was the belief that the Palestinian cause was dead, that it was finished, that the reality was that the Palestinian voice did not matter anymore, that on the table, the ones who would decide their future would be those who were about to erase them, that Israel was going to go to annex Gaza, that they were annexing the West Bank, that the pogroms were taking place, and that the world quite simply didn't care, that at the United Nations, it was being pushed that Palestine would no longer exist in the future, and the Arab leaders were about to go along with this as well. The Saudi ambassador and UAE ambassadors were going to West Bank, and they were being stoned by the Palestinians who were saying, you're about to sell us out. And no matter how much people kept saying to the Brits and to the Americans and to Europe that this is an injustice of epic proportions, that you're about to let the Israelis ethnically cleanse an entire territory, and you're about to recognize, and you're not willing to take any action whatsoever, there was this sense of despair, Piers, that no international law resolution was being implemented,
okay,
that the United Nations was futile. The point that I'm making here, Piers, if you allow me just to finish this point.
No, sorry, to be clear, did you feel personally a sense of euphoria after October the 7th?
Piers, when I saw that the Palestinians were still there, that the Palestinians were not going to be rolled over, it is true that many people were happy that at least the Palestinians could still take a stand. When they saw the civilian casualties, their hearts were broken because this is not the way of Muslims. Muslims shouldn't be killing civilians. We don't celebrate that. We have in our tradition that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he sent one of his generals to a tribe and he found out civilians had been killed in the campaign, he turned to the sky and said, Allahumma inni abra'u ilayka mimma fa'ala Khalid. Allah, I'm innocent of what this general has done. I'm innocent of the death of civilians that have been caused. In other words, the act under international law by which a Palestinian tries to take back his territory is enshrined in international law.
But I have with it,
the death of the civilians...
Sami Hamdi, the problem I have with it is the timeline, right? This is the 23rd of October, you said this. It's 16 days after October the 7th. And everybody knew what had happened by then.
Piers,
and I'm just curious whether do you now regret saying, when you got the news that it happened, how many of you felt the euphoria? Do you regret saying that?
Piers, what I regret is the death of civilians. What I regret is the bloodshed. What I regret is the theft of land. What I regret is ethnic cleansing. What I regret is that for centuries, Jews, Muslims and Christians lived side by side in Andalusia, Sarajevo and Jerusalem. What I regret is that we lived together and married into each other and built families together.
Do you regret asking that crowd on October the 23rd, when you got the news that it happened, October the 7th, how many of you felt the euphoria? Do you wish you hadn't phrased it like that now?
I wish, Piers, this is what I regret. I wish that there were other avenues available for the Palestinians in order to secure a statehood and recognition of their state. I regret, Piers.
That wasn't
I
my question.
regret, Piers.
That's not my
I
question.
regret the bloodshed being shed. That euphoria that I describe is not a euphoria of bloodshed. That euphoria I describe was in a sentiment at the time in which the Palestinians would not be rolled over. That's all I'm talking about. I don't celebrate war. I don't celebrate the spilling of bloodshed. No one has a euphoria when they see blood being spilled. The euphoria is that people are talking about the Palestinians.
When it's the
Piers,
Jews
they're being
or the
kicked out of their
Christians.
homes, Piers. They're being slaughtered in cold blood. Piers, even before October 7th, the 780,000 people kicked out of their homes just because of some project that didn't want people living together. Piers, the despair is real, Piers. Piers, these are innocent kids being killed. Sidra with her legs blown off. The euphoria was that the Palestinians won't die. The euphoria is not in the killing of a Jew or a Christian. When we come from a legacy where the Ottoman Sultan sent boats to bring the Jews from Andalusia when Isabella was slaughtering them, that after the Holocaust, Piers, the Jews came to Palestine and said to them, please don't do to us what the Europeans did.
All right,
I know the heritage I come from. Piers, Piers, just on this final point, Piers, on this final point, Piers, nothing in that doctored video, nothing in that whole speech, which was for 2 hours long, endorses the death of civilians. It's not the way of the Muslims. Rather, what I was arguing and what I still argue is give the Palestinians their humanity. Put them on the table. Don't steamroll them. Don't go over their heads just because you want to take their land. Respect international law. Respect the United Nations. Give them their land back. Give them their nation back. And let's go back to living side by side the way that we did for centuries as the people of God.
Okay, let me bring in Valentina Gomez to respond to that.
Finally, Piers, what a boatload of crap that was, honestly. Just straight up ranting nonstop. Exactly what Muslims do. Just try to confuse you, blow up, and just yell nonstop. Piers, let's be honest. Muslims are a threat to national security. That's why Christians in Nigeria are being slaughtered by Muslims.
Do you know how many Muslims there are in the world?
No, I don't need to know.
Well, have a guess. How many Muslims do you think there are in the world?
Way too many, Piers. I prefer one dog over 100 million Muslims.
Okay. Yeah, that's a disgusting, offensive, and vile thing to say. It's very much on brand for you. But how many Muslims are there in the world?
Goats. They like to rape little girls. That's normal.
Yeah, how many Muslims are there? How many Muslims are there in the world?
I don't know, Piers. That's not something I care about. How many Christians are in the world?
Have a guess. Have a guess.
Have a guess on how many Christians are in the world.
No, I'm asking the questions. How many Muslims would you think there are in the world?
I already said way too many, 1 billion. And they have 56 Muslim nations.
How many?
They should go there and live in their 56 Muslim nations very happily amongst each other.
You describe all Muslims, because you're disgustingly Islamophobic, you describe all Muslims in the most disgusting manner. You call them a bunch of killers and rapists and so on. I'm just asking you a simple question to put these views into context. Do you know how many people you're talking about?
Piers, I do not rape, and I do not kill, and I do not steal. That's something the Muslims
How many Muslims are there in the world?
I already told you.
You say they all do
many.
this. How many?
I already told you, way too many, Piers. Just like they have taken over the UK.
You've no idea, have you? You have no idea how many people you are branding rapists and killers. You don't know, do you? You don't care.
For me to say it's too many.
You don't care, do you? Yeah, you don't care how many there are. You don't care the context of your vile comments.
How many girls have been raped by the Muslim rape gangs?
Piers,
Go ahead, answer my question, Piers.
Are you going to try?
No, I'm talking to Piers
and compare?
Now. How many girls have been raped by the Muslim rape gangs? Just like Mohammed raped 6-year-old
Can I ask a question to Valentina?
The grooming gang.
No, I'm not.
The grooming scandal was an utter. The grooming scandal was an utter disgrace, and the perpetrators were finally brought to justice way longer than they should have been, and they were imprisoned for their disgusting actions. And what happened there was a repulsive. There was a repulsive failure by our justice system to bring these people to account. However, I am asking you, because you brand all Muslims with the same way that you brand the people that committed the grooming gang scandal. You brand all Muslims the same way, but you have no idea how many Muslims there are. There are nearly 2 billion Muslims in this world. And what you're doing when you talk about them as a community of people
Let's
is you're
say it's
tarring
1
all
to 2 billion Muslims.
You're tarring
Piers
all
Morgan.
2
Yeah,
billion.
that's still
all
too many.
2 billion. You are tarring. Let me finish. You are tarring all 2 billion people with the same brush of being killers and rapists and so on. To which I say to you, that is the purest personification of vile bigotry, racism, and Islamophobia. Why don't you focus on people of all religions
They follow a
who commit
book
heinous
that
crimes?
calls for the murder of Jews, Christians, Hindus, and infidels just because we don't abide, we don't bow down to their stupid rock, Piers Morgan. We don't do that in Christianity. In Christianity, if you want to be an atheist, if you want to worship a cow, if you want to worship a table, you're allowed to do that without getting killed. Because right now in Egypt, a 30-year-old man is being held in prison because he's about to get murdered by the government of Egypt because he is no longer a Muslim. He is now a Christian.
Piers, it's just not true.
And
Piers,
when you
if you
call-
don't mind,
when
can I
you
say
call-
something
when
here,
you
Piers?
call-
Piers, if you don't mind, can I say
Yes, I'll bring in Sami Hamdi to respond, yeah.
Piers, I just want to. So she keeps talking
Sami
about
just
the
rants.
idea. She keeps talking about this idea of rapists and the like. Piers, I went to the website of the Office for National Statistics and the Bureau of Justice of the Americans, and here you can see these are all the victims saying who their perpetrators are. And here they say that it's people that they know, it's their family members, it's their friends, it's their acquaintances. Only this small number over here is done by strangers or what she calls grooming gangs. You can see the overwhelming majority are done by those that they know or those or their relatives. Nobody says this is white Christian sexual epidemic. If you look at the population, she says that they're being taken over. This is the population of Muslims in the UK and in the US. In the US, 1.1%, in the UK, 6%. Tell me, where is the takeover that's taking place here? Piers, when you look at the crimes that are committed against Brits, and I'm a Brit, I'm born and raised here, against our sisters and our daughters and the like, here are the crimes committed by Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris. Nobody says this is white Christian rape. No one says this is a white Christian problem. Everybody says crime has no faith and it has no race. This was committed by vile individuals and justice should be delivered. Piers, when you look at the Office of National Statistics and you see the number of people incarcerated in the UK, you can see that they are overwhelmingly white. But nobody says that this country has a white criminal problem. No one says that this is a Christian problem. Everybody says this is a criminal problem by vile people because crime has no faith and crime has no race. Piers, when you look at the mass shootings in America that kill students and kill their children, this is the data from the Bureau of Justice in America. This is by white shooters, this is by ethnic minorities. No one says that in America they have a white Christian shooting problem because they know crime has no faith, they know crime has no race, and they know that it is individuals who need to be brought to justice. The reality
Well, let me ask you this question, Sami Hamdi. Let me ask you, Sami Hamdi. Sami Hamdi, I understand the point you're making. It doesn't in any way, it doesn't in any way excuse the appalling way that the grooming gang scandal was handled, or the failure of our justice system to bring those perpetrators who were almost exclusively in that scandal case. They were British Pakistani men. It doesn't excuse any of that, but you make a valid point about the totality of statistics. My question for Sami Hamdi is about Valentina Gomez. Would you have allowed her into the UK?
Piers, part of me believes that it would have been good for Valentina to come and see the real Britain. The Britain that belongs to the family that I am in. The English blood that runs through my kids from Stenning, Brighton. It would have been good for her to come and meet the wonderful giants of Britain who are Muslim, like Timothy Winter in Cambridge, like Paul Williams, like Paul Keeler, like Suhail Hanif. It would have been good for her to see the realities of what Britain is like and how Muslims live in Britain and contribute to society. Because when Tucker Carlson finally saw it, instead of regurgitating the hate that he was doing in 2001, Tucker Carlson came out and said, I was wrong and I didn't know that Muslims love Jesus too and they believe in the second coming. When Candace finally got to see the reality, she came out and said that I was disgusted with myself for not looking in further. I believe Valentina is still young. She's in the early stages of what Tucker Carlson was. I'm asking her, skip the years that it takes to figure it out. Go and see what the world looks like. Go and see the reality, because your message of hate didn't work. Abdul Sayed, the Senate candidate for Michigan, a right-winger turned up in his rally and told him, I'm here as a right-winger. Abdul Sayed put his hand on his heart and said that I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad we can talk with one another. I'm so glad that we're standing together. Marjorie Taylor Greene says this is no longer a battle between left and right. This is a battle for America first. And the final point, Piers, I'll finish on this. Valentina's brother serves in U.S. forces. That Valentina, instead of focusing on the 1% of American Muslims who aren't the problem in America, perhaps she should focus on the 42 million Americans living on SNAP who can't afford basic groceries. She should focus on the servicemen who return to America and sit in the freezing cold on Magnificent Mile in Chicago. She should focus on those ordinary Americans going bankrupt as a result of medical bills. There's a reason she was rejected in Texas, because no one resonates with that hate. There's a reason why she was rejected in Texas, because no one buys the hate anymore. What wins in America, what wins in the UK, the reason reform lost in Gorton and Denton is because Zach Polanski came with a message of hope. In America, Mamdani came with a message of hope. And even Donald Trump is, even Donald Trump, before the mess with Iran, even Donald Trump, when he won the election, declared that he had established the biggest coalition of Muslims and Arab Americans.
We've run out of time. I just want to say, Sami Hamdi, that's enough, please. I would simply say to Valentina Gomez that sometimes when people show themselves, you should believe them when they show you. And your reaction to the English-born Home Secretary of my country, Shabana Mahmood, who's a diligent, hard-working, intelligent, decent person born in Birmingham in the Midlands of my country. Your reaction to her, calling her a dirty Pakistani Muslim, was one of the most disgusting things I've seen or heard in a very long time. And it showed you for what you are. You are a disgusting Islamophobic bigot that hates 2 billion people on this planet simply because of their religion.
They hate me too.
And shame on you.
They hate people like me. They hate people like you. They hate people like your wife.
We don't hate you.
You're only back.
I promise we don't hate you.
You're only back on this program. You're only back on this program because you were banned from my country. I say good on you, Home Secretary.
Because my message,
you're a more decent person
than
Valentina Gomez could ever dream of being.
I wouldn't be
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you both.
Let's go through the specific claims made in this exchange one at a time, because several of them are directly checkable against public data. Start with the global Muslim population, because Gomez's entire framing depends on this number, and she explicitly said she didn't know it and didn't care to know it. The actual figure, according to the Pew Research Center's most recent comprehensive global religion demographic study, places the worldwide Muslim population at approximately 1.9 to 2 billion people, making it the second largest religious group on the planet after Christianity. Gomez's stated comparison, one dog over 100 million Muslims, understates the actual population by roughly a factor of 20. Or more importantly, her own admission that she doesn't know or care about the actual number undermines any claim that her position is based on informed analysis of a specific threat, rather than a blanket statement about an entire global religious demographic. Shabana Mahmood claim, which is the most straightforward factual dispute in the entire exchange. Mahmood was born in Birmingham, England in 1980 to parents who had immigrated from Mir, Pakistan. She has served as a member of Parliament for Birmingham Ladywood since 2010 and became UK Home Secretary in 2025. Being born in England to immigrant parents makes her, by any standard legal and common definition used in the UK, a British citizen by birth, the same status Piers Morgan holds. Gomez's characterization of her as simply Pakistani rather than as a British-born official does not match her documented citizenship status. The grooming gang statistics deserve careful and precise handling, because this is an area where both overcorrection and undercorrection produce inaccurate pictures, and precision matters. Independent government commission reviews into specific historical grooming gang cases in towns including Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford did find that a significant proportion of convicted perpetrators in those specific documented cases were of Pakistani heritage, and multiple official inquiries, including the 2022 Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, criticized both the police and local authorities for failing to act, partly due to concerns about appearing racially insensitive. That failure is real, well documented, and deserves continued scrutiny. At the same time, broader national data from the Office for National Statistics on child sexual abuse in England and Wales consistently shows that the overwhelming majority of sexual offenses against children across all demographic groups are committed by someone known to the victim, typically a family member or someone within their existing trust network, rather than by strangers in organized group settings. Both of these facts are true simultaneously. The documented grooming gang cases in specific towns had a disproportionate representation of one ethnic group among convicted offenders, and the broader national pattern of child sexual abuse across all communities is overwhelmingly committed by someone known to the victim, rather than fitting the specific pattern being generalized to an entire global religious population. The Texas primary result is also a matter of public electoral record. Gomez ran in a Texas Republican primary and lost by a margin described in this exchange as 49 points, a defeat of that scale representing one of the more decisive primary losses in recent memory for a candidate who had built a significant social media following prior to the race. Subscribe to Truth Review. We take every number apart, we check it against the actual source, and we don't let a claim stand just because it was said with confidence.